Okay, so for everyone who is joining us today, this is Amy. I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk a little bit about what she does.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Oakes. I'm a physical therapist. I live in Duluth, Minnesota. I've been a PT now for about 13 years. I graduated in 2007. Yeah, did you want to hear like my whole kind of
Sure.
work history or just what I'm doing now?
Sure. Yeah, you can talk. We can go all the way back to kind of your education and how you got to where you're at, and then we can move forward to like where you got to where you're at specifically now. So like, I guess we'll start with like, where did you do your undergrad at?
I did my undergrad at St. Scholastica. It's a private college in right here in Duluth, and I also did the PT program there. I chose St. Scholastica because I had a better chance of getting into the PT program if I did my undergrad there
Mhm.
as well. So yeah, I nowadays I think you have to get your 4-year bachelor's degree and then go into a 3-year doctoral program. I was in the first year that they offered a doctoral program
Mhm.
at St. Scholastica, so we got to go. I got to get my I got to go 3 years bachelor's and then a condensed doctoral program where we had to take a ton of courses over the summer and everything. So I ended up getting the whole thing done in 6 years total, which was
Wow.
really nice.
Oh yeah.
7. So um, so I liked that. And I was really glad I was in that first year because if I had graduated just a year before, I could have only gotten a master's. So
Wow. So when you kind of look back to when you were an undergrad, like what class for you was kind of like the class that kind of turned the corner for you, or what got you interested in physical therapy originally?
well, I was actually interested in it even before I went to college. So that was kind of my plan all along. And I always thought I may change my mind. I thought maybe I would go into nursing um, or med school, but it just kept feeling like that was the right choice all along. In undergrad, I really enjoyed like statistics and med terminology and stuff like that. I really liked kinesiology and my like the first anatomy and physiology classes. I really enjoyed those too. Um, so everything just I kept thinking I might change my mind and I didn't, so I just stuck with my original plan.
That's awesome. Well, so obviously the students that are going to be watching this are like early in their careers and they're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I get into PT school? Like what are the tips and tricks that you would say? Like what given your experience, was there anything that you did during your undergrad years that kind of increased your success rate into getting into PT school?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I think the most important thing, obviously, you have to do well and keep grades up, but I think the biggest thing was getting a lot of volunteering experience, like a lot of shadowing hours. Um, and I know that it looks better if you get shadowing hours from different types of physical therapy practices, like outpatient physical therapy and inpatient and nursing homes and as many different kinds of settings as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So I did quite a bit of that. I did I did mostly outpatient, um, but got a little experience shadowing in home care too. Um, so I would encourage people to do as much shadowing as they can. Plus, it gives you a really good idea if it's going to be something you like, because there's such variance in the profession,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a lot of people don't like certain settings, but really like other settings. So
Yeah, yeah, and I think we'll come back to that idea of like the different things that you can do with the degree. So you got into PT school, and in terms of difficulty, like how do you think it was what you expected? Was it more difficult or less difficult than you had anticipated?
actually, where I am geographically, and I think just the time that I was getting into school, it it wasn't bad. I think that there were like 50 applicants and 36 people got into the program. So it really wasn't bad. Like I hear from students now that like especially at the U of M, there's like a couple thousand applicants and only like 50 spots in the program. So
Wow.
when I was going through, it wasn't bad. It was based on your GPA and your shadowing experience and interviews and stuff, but it wasn't too bad. So go to a small school.
That's good. I mean, I think so often people think that they need to go to these huge programs, and sometimes
Yeah.
going to the smaller ones end up being just a better fit because you get more, one-on-one experience in your student to teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought my program was great. So
Well, that's awesome. Okay, so you graduate as a physical therapist, and then what was like the next step? What did you transition into? Do you do
yeah,
clinicals or internships?
so in my last I had to do 4 internships over the last year and a half of my program. And the last internship that I did ended up being in it was like a mixed setting. It was at a hospital, but it was a lot of outpatient where people would come in from the community to see me. And then I also saw people in the hospital and the nursing home that was attached. So I got a little bit of everything. That was my last internship, and then they hired me from there.
Wow.
So I got to that was really nice because I knew that they already wanted me to work there right before I interviewed. And I already had experience. I knew the documentation. I knew everything that I would have to do in that position. So that was my first job, and I stayed there for 3 years. Do you want me to just go forward with all?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Then the next position I took, I had one of my classmates started her own business. It was like a consulting, or not consulting, contracting business. So I joined her, and we took out contracts with different clinics in northern Minnesota, and provided therapy based on our contract. Like we would get like an 8-week contract with a clinic and fulfill that, like work full time there, and maybe go to another clinic for longer, just to fulfill like staffing needs that clinic had.
Mm-hmm.
That was really fun. I did that for 2 years, and I got experience in like every setting. So and I really enjoyed that. I got to learn like every documentation system that there is. So it was really nice. It made me well prepared. But at that same time, I had little kids and stuff at home, and it was kind of difficult because sometimes I would have to drive 75 miles one way to go to work. And so after a couple of years of doing that, I took a job at a rehab center here in Duluth. And for the next 6 years, I pretty much just worked in that setting. And that was, it was like short-term inpatient rehab. So people would come to that center after having like a knee replacement or a hip replacement or other surgeries, or a stroke or a traumatic brain injury. And they would come to us and stay for anywhere from a couple of weeks to 3 months. And they got pretty intensive therapy during that time. So I did that for about 6 years, 5-6 years. I did a little home care through them too, through working with that business. And now for the last 2 years, I wanted to get back into outpatient after that. Because at that point I'd been doing that for a long time, and I was kind of losing some of that. I just felt like I was losing some of that outpatient knowledge, like more like taking, a young, healthy patient, um, and trying to figure out what their problem is, and design a program for them. Like I was seeing so many like knee replacements, hip replacements, everything was just so
So you weren't seeing as much
cookie
diversity.
cutter, you know.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to get back into outpatient, which I've been doing for the last 2 years.
Nice.
Although I'm still doing home care too with my outpatient clinic now. So I'm kind of doing outpatient and home care now.
Nice.
Home care with older clients pretty much, and outpatient with younger.
It sounds like you've had like some pretty diverse experiences though, like especially when you were doing the contracting work. It sounds like you were able to kind of go into a lot of different settings and really diversify your experience. I think, to a lot of the different professions I've talked to, it sounds like early in a career, it's nice to do that diversification, because then you can really start
Absolutely.
to figure out where you want to specialize or spend, the majority of your career. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important to, as much as you can, try to never just put yourself in a box. Try to keep diversifying. Um, unless you find something that you just know is where you want to be. But for me, I've always wanted to keep my skills up in all the areas so that I could work anywhere. Um, and it's less boring and more fun that way too. So.
Is there like one particular type of physical therapy that has just been like the most fun for you, where you're just like, ooh, I really enjoy that and I would like to spend more time doing that?
Um, yeah, I always I, I really have a lot, as much as I was just saying I wanted to work with younger clients and stuff like that, which I really love working with like runners and athletes, but I always come back to, I really enjoy working with older adults. And I really enjoy working with like, especially like neurologically impacted older adults, like that have Parkinson's or a stroke. Um, and I just love that so much because you can make such a big impact on their lives,
Mhm.
um it's you can, working with a younger person, you might be able to get somebody back to running or back to um doing something at a high level, but it's so rewarding being able to get somebody back to just being able to walk or to move around on their own, and it means so much to them, and it's
Yeah.
so, and I just like working with older people. They're fun and they have good stories, and um
Yeah, I think at
yeah,
a time in a period, or a period in a person's life where they're losing some of their independence, I think a lot, giving them back some of that independence through mobility is a huge thing.
yeah, and so many of them, they think they'll never get to that next level, and
Mhm.
so they are so, they're so happy when they can finally do some of these things for themselves. So I really like working with people in that population.
That's awesome. Well, you kind of mentioned a couple different settings that you've worked in, but um, and this is kind of, I guess, a big question. Like, how would you kind of describe the field of PT, like in terms of like the different avenues that you can go down? Again, for somebody who's just kind of trying to figure out what the possibilities are. I imagine that's a pretty big question. So,
Yeah, no, um, yeah, there's so many things. So you can go like an outpatient route, and in outpatient you can focus on working like with athletes. There's a lot of physical therapists that work for sports teams or school, like colleges and universities. So you could go totally in working just with athletes, that type of thing. Or you could work with all ages as outpatient, and see people for pain or after surgeries, or for anything really. You could go in a pediatric direction and work either in a clinic or in schools, like elementary schools, and work with in any range of diagnoses like cerebral palsy or things like that. And school PT is a whole different a whole different thing. Pediatrics is something that I don't have experience in, and that's something I don't know if I could do. It's just it's very different.
Yeah.
I think people that go down that route really do specialize in that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There is inpatient PT, like PTs that work in a hospital, people that work in ICUs. They have a lot of specialized training because they have to know a lot more than like I do about watching lab results and EKGs and stuff like that, taking all that information and helping it determine what they can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, so yeah, that takes a lot of specialized training too. There is the inpatient rehab, like I did, where you're working with people just out of the hospital. Home care, which I've also done a lot of. That's working with sometimes young people, sometimes pediatric or young adults, but mostly almost all older people. It's people who are homebound and can't get out of their home for medical reasons. Um, uh, and that's I love home care. You get to use your imagination a lot. You don't have any much of any equipment, so you but it's also really fun, and you get to make functional changes in people's lives because you can show them how to do things in their home, which is nice. What else? There's so many different kinds. There's women's health PT um, that work with women that have incontinence issues. There's vestibular PT. I do a little of that work to help cure vertigo conditions or adapt to them. Yeah, tons.
Well, you just learned about the vestibulocochlear system in class, so it's like hopefully you guys,
Yeah,
yeah, you hear about the vestibular system. That should hopefully make them think, oh, I think I've heard that word before.
yeah, PT can be totally helpful for especially one condition called benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, BPPV. We can there's maneuvers that you can do to totally take care of that problem completely in a couple of sessions. So
Wow, that's cool.
yeah, it's really fun.
So I guess that kind of leads me to my next question. Like, what about your job do you love? Like, what is like the best part that you look forward to the most? And I think you've kind of hit upon the theme. I'm for your answer. I think this working with the folks and seeing them improve. But I don't want to steal your answer, so I'm gonna let you answer.
Yeah, no, yeah, that anytime anybody has asked me that, that's for sure that's for sure the thing that keeps me going from day to day is making improvements in people's lives. And it's like it can be a really hard job because you can have a day where it seems like nobody is improving, everybody is going backward, and it can be really frustrating. But um, those times when people meet their goals really makes up for all the hard days, and you have to be really creative. Every patient is different, so what works for somebody might not work for another person.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the variety, and I love helping people,
Yeah.
meet their goals.
That makes sense. Is there a part of the job that people don't think about or don't really acknowledge when they're thinking about going into the profession? Is there like a lot of paperwork that you wouldn't expect, or is the healthcare system like an issue? Like, you hear the term physical therapist, so you in your mind picture, oh, I'm going to go help people, but recognize that, all jobs are very, multifaceted, and sometimes they're just things that we don't think about. So are there any components to this job that you can think of are like that?
Yeah, definitely. The paperwork is the biggest issue. Like I have never in 13 years, that has been my problem from the very beginning, is never getting my paperwork done in time, because um, every place you work for, especially if you work for like a bigger corporation, they all want you to do your notes as you're with the client, because that economically, that makes the most sense. They don't want to pay you for time that you're not billing a client, you know. Um, but I hate doing that. I like to make eye contact with people, and I like to listen to their stories, and I like them to know that I'm listening. So I hate being on my computer and typing while they're talking. Um, I just hate it. So I always am behind and like staying late and probably doing work for free, which I should not, you know, like staying late and
Yeah.
maybe not recording that. Yeah. So yeah, that's the biggest problem. And I haven't come up with a solution to that.
Yeah. But I imagine your clients are really thankful though for your present, like you go in, like I've noticed that you go into a doctor's office nowadays and they're doing that, they're typing while they're
Yeah.
talking to you, and there's just so little, the quality of the patient interaction I think is decreased because of that. So it kind of sucks, but
Yeah.
it's understandable as to why that's the case.
Yep.
Um, well, I think that's like a lot of the more directed questions. Is there anything, I guess, about the profession? Are you part of any professional associations, or do you go to conferences, or do you feel like that's an important part of the profession?
Yeah. So I'm a member of the APTA. That's our national organization. I haven't been to any of the conferences. It's one of those things I always think I'm going to do, and I just never make time for it. I do keep up with continuing education though. Um, so it's like a licensure requirement, but also I usually do more hours than are required, because there's always new evidence coming out and there's always new techniques that are coming out. So I really enjoy going to courses and learning those things. I'm going to I don't know if you've had dry needling or heard of dry needling at all. It's kind of like acupuncture, but it's using uh, acupuncture type needles at motor points in muscles to get rid of trigger points,
Interesting.
and decrease pain. I'm actually going to that course in a couple of weeks. So there's always courses coming up. Um, but yeah, I think being a member of the professional societies is really important, because you stay up to date with what's going on in your profession, and and uh, and that organization also, what I'm looking for, like they lobby for the PT profession, in state and national governments. So uh, we're always fighting to get better reimbursement and things like that. So I think it's important to be part of those societies.
Yeah, I think it gives you a better sense of kind of what's going on nationally too, because I think it's so easy to kind of get in your own little nook, your own little
Yes.
community, and sometimes
Yep.
opening it up to what's happening on the national level, I think is important too, to kind of keep that in mind.
Yep.
Um, I'm trying to think, is there any other like things about your profession you'd like to note? I'm just opening up kind of a very general question here, but
Yeah. Yeah, I would say anybody who is interested in it. Yeah, it's just a lot. I guess I've been talking a lot about that, but it's just a lot more vast than most people think. And
yeah.
if you don't like a certain area, there's definitely an area that I think you would find that would really fit for you. And yeah, I guess that's the biggest thing, is just that it's a really rapidly growing, and in demand profession, and there's so many things you can do with it.
Yeah.
I'm very happy I have it, because if we moved anywhere, I could get a job pretty easily. And
Yeah, and I think that's something to take into account, is like just how you'll, once you have a degree, how you're going to integrate into, the economy. We're all subject to that. So if you have a type of profession that's going to continue to evolve and ride that wave, especially with the aging population that we have right now, I imagine physical therapists are pretty high in demand.
yeah, absolutely.
I guess the last question I have for you then is like, it can be outside of the scope of physical therapy, maybe because, we're older individuals, we've lived some life. Do you have any life experience type of things you'd like to tell students, like advice, I guess? as they're navigating the world of being a young person?
um, yeah, like I guess like the biggest thing I've learned that people really appreciate, it's like seems so stupid, but is just like be accountable to people, especially your patients and clients and other people that are relying on you. Like it is so crazy how many people don't return phone calls or return emails. Like I swear, I tell my kids that all the time. Like if you just call people when you say you're going to and get back to people and treat everybody with respect, no matter what, if they're an office manager or a scheduler, like, or a doctor, like treat everybody with the same level of respect and always stay accountable. I think that's like the biggest way you get ahead and keep advancing. People appreciate it so much because I swear people just they're not good at that. you know?
Yeah, no, I do know it is hard because sometimes you'll like send an email to somebody and it just goes out into the black hole of nothingness. And you're just like, what happened here? I thought we were like doing this.
I know. I have to call doctors all the time with questions and I get calls back like I swear it's like 25% of the time on the first call. So then I have to call again and it's just so hard. And um I think, just keeping a checklist and making sure you're staying accountable to everybody that needs you is really important, I
Wow.
guess.
And I guess really my last question is, you mentioned that you have kids. Like, how's the work-life balance been for you? I think that's something else that, maybe a student who's a freshman isn't necessarily thinking about, but as everyone gets older, you might get a family or what have you. And so taking that into consideration when you're making career choices, I think is also important. Do you feel like PT has been flexible enough for you that you've been able to, have a relatively desirable work-life balance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been like like right now, um, the kids are having to do distance learning. Uh, so I went into work and asked if I could cut down to 20 hours a week so that I can stay home with them more and help them. And it was no problem. And I've never had a problem doing that kind of thing. So and yeah, I think that's a great thing because I know lots of people, my wife in particular, like there's no way that she could ever, I mean, she definitely has flexibility. She's an assistant professor at UMD, um, but there's there's times where she's gonna have to work 60 hours in a week if she's got certain experiments and stuff like that. And I don't have that. I have a lot more flexibility in my schedule. I can really adjust it to what my kids need and what my family needs.
That's awesome. Um, well, I think those are all the questions I have for you. I just want to open it up one more time. Is there anything else you'd like to add or?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much for your time, and it was a real pleasure to chat with you today. I'm going to stop recording and we'll chat a few more minutes if you have time.
Okay, thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
everybody.